Thank you, Blaine, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to come and talk to you about my life, my favorite subject, me. I have Jerry Sweeney to thank you for that, for inviting me. This slide was inspired by one of my favorite movies, Dr. Strangelove. You know, Dr. Strangelove, the full title was Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. So that's where that came from. I would have loved for my wife to be here today, but she had to fly back to Tokyo. I mean, back to Tulsa. Her aging mother had a problem. She's had this yard guy working for her for the last 40 years, and his name is Bominicius. And she'd always paid him with cash, but she didn't have any cash around last week, so she had to write him a check. And she said, "How do you spell your name?" And he said, J.T. Taylor. "My name is J.T. Taylor." And of course this confused her mom. And so she wrote out the check, J.T. Taylor. And it wasn't until later she realized that 40 years earlier, she had asked him what his name was. And he said, "Just call me by my initials." Just call me by my initials. That's a true story. I grew up in Midland, Texas. I thought the whole world looked like that. And this is the blacksmith shop that was in Midland when I grew up. And they tore it down when I was in the 8th grade. And the building was leaning over. It had about 10 degrees when they finally tore it down. And all the old cattle brands were made in this blacksmith shop. And the guy the blacksmith's name was John Pliska. He was an Austrian immigrant. And he and his buddy were interested in airplanes, and Wright Flyer Model B came through Midland in the early 1900s. And John and his buddy built an airplane, and they took it over. They took it over to Odessa to fly it one day in the summer, and they didn't get airborne. It was too hot, and people had paid a lot of money to see this airplane fly, and they got angry. I don't know if there was a fight or whatever, but anyway, they boxed it up and they took it back to this building and put it in these crates, and it sat there for 50 years until they tore that building down and they found his kids found the airplane. Well, they donated it to the city, and if you've been to Midland Air Terminal, it's hanging above baggage claim right now. And when you look at that thing, to think that a blacksmith and his buddy built that from buggy components. I think they rode a train up to Cleveland or something and got that engine. Pretty awesome. This is my dad. He was in class 44I, flew the B-25. And the reason I included this, and in fact his twin brother was also an Air Force pilot. I got to wear his wings when I graduated from Air Force pilot training as well. When I went to college, this is my favorite picture. When I went to college, that's me and my big brother in the fraternity. Anybody recognize these guys? Anybody? Now there's got to be somebody that recognizes. Beach Boys. That's correct, sir. That's Al Jardine, Mike Love, Carl Wilson, Dennis Wilson, and Bruce Johnson, the Beach Boys. That was in 1968. When after I graduated from college, the draft was on. My number was low, and I joined the Air Force, and we started off in a version of a Cessna 172 called a T-41, and graduated to the T-37, and then the T-38. My buddy Bob, this was one of my best friends in pilot training, and he graduated number 1, and we were going to take F-4s to Ubon, Thailand. And my wife, the night before selections, convinced me to not take the F-4, and for a variety of reasons. But I did make it to Ubon in the 141 and visit Bob. But instead, I took a C-141 Alpha and started flying down here at Norton Air Force Base, over the Pacific primarily. My boss, oh, that's the cockpit of 141. One day I was sitting here, and I looked over at the co-pilot, and he was asleep, and then I looked at the engineer, and he was asleep, and then I looked at the navigator, we used to have a navigator, and he was asleep, and I thought, well, I guess I'll take a nap. It's supposed to be nap time. Well, somebody ought to stay awake. That's always been my philosophy. I think the captain should always stay awake. Anyway, my boss at Norton, Jim Merritt, flew the first 141 into Hanoi to pick up the POWs and bring them home as part of Operation Homecoming. And this is the picture that they took of that first flight as they became airborne. Later on, I had the opportunity to fly the T-39 at Norton. Chuck Yeager was with flew our airplanes. I didn't fly with Chuck, but he had his own instructor. But when the POWs came back, some of them got back on flying status. In fact, I've seen some of them on your wall, Dan, over at the museum. John Flynn was Lieutenant General, Inspector General of the Air Force when I flew with John on the T-39. And what a great opportunity that was for me to fly the T-39. And I did that for 3 years. And then I got hired by the fastest growing regional airline in America, Texas International. And when I got to Houston, I realized that some of our pilots had clearly been hired over the phone. and really, there aren't any former TI pilots in here, are there? I think some of them couldn't read. And it was kind of awkward for us because here we were new in the right seat. You know, I felt like I had come from a very elite organization, and when the flight attendants would come to the cockpit to ask a question, they would address it to us in the right seat. You know, that's really the captain's decision. You know, you ought to ask him. But we had a lot of guys that were crop dusters, and I think maybe the chemicals had. We actually had the first DC-9 ever made. The number was 301. And it was bent to pieces. After the DC-9 and we merged with Continental, I transitioned to the 737-300. And that was an interesting time because we were transitioning, you know, from the analog to the digital, from the round dials to the glass cockpit. So this was our first glass cockpit. And I was a Check Airman, and so I had to, nobody knew anything. The guy that taught me knew nothing. And so I had to study really hard about this new airplane because I had to teach it. And I flew that airplane probably for, versions of it, for about 15 years. And I love the 737, the most popular commercial airliner of all time. And as I evaluated people, I would ask them if they came from the 737, I said, did you like the 737? And If they didn't like the 737, I probably wasn't gonna like them. You know, because if you were a pilot, you should have liked that airplane. I loved that airplane. It was a great airplane. And I flew it all over the place and did everything you could possibly do. And then, well, that's a different paint job. When we got a new CEO, Gordon Bethune, changed our paint job. And then that was the 800. That was the last version of that airplane I flew. I don't know how this flight got in there. And then I went to the 777. 777, and there's a model of the 777 right here. That particular paint job was by an artist named Peter Max. And my friend Jerry used to say, Peter Max, what a great name. The photographers all around the world liked us because it was the only airplane painted like that. And so we'd taxi out in Paris and you'd see a whole bunch of photographers with their big lenses over there taking a picture of us. And this is when I started loving the bunk. We had a great bunk bed, and of course we'd take turns. We'd have, going to Tokyo, which I flew for many years, we had 4 pilots. We had the bunkies, as they called them, and they'd go to the bunk initially. The co-pilot and I would fly halfway to Tokyo. And usually a beam from Houston nonstop to Tokyo, and it was usually a beam Anchorage, somewhere on there. And they would come up and relive us. We'd go back and sleep for 5 or 6 hours. And I got to the point where I really liked laying there in my t-shirt and my underwear in command of an airplane with 300 people on board. I thought that was pretty. Watching a video on my laptop. By the way, that airplane weighed almost exactly twice as much as the C-141 Alpha, which I thought that 141 was the biggest thing that I'd ever seen. And it was a great airplane. When I compare it to the 787, which I finished on, this airplane was like a rock. The 787 was more like a feather. Barry's nodding, he knows. Everything had to be reduced in weight on the 787 Dreamliner. And as a result, I felt like I tell you what, I never made a bad landing in that airplane. And I flew it for 15 years. Of course, you only got one landing a day. But the 787, I was wondering if I ever was going to get a good landing. It took me a while to learn that airplane. So this is the 777. This woman, this was the Monday morning after the London Olympics, and that woman had won the gold medal in the 100-meter breaststroke. She was from Texas A&M. This girl on the left, Allison Schmidt, won 3 gold medals, a silver and a bronze, and a world record at 22 years old. And she took our picture with her gold medals hanging around her neck. That's a 777 cockpit. Well, I tried to delete some of these pictures, but I don't know how. So they're in there, and that's my girls. We were in Paris. That if you happen to, every hour on the hour, those lights on the Eiffel Tower blink, you know. And our hotel was right next to the Eiffel Tower, and it was weird. They'd always give the captain the room on the side where the Eiffel Tower was, you know. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see those lights blink, just a reflection of the lights blinking on the wall. We were there Christmas time. Yeah, there's ship 14 in Paris. These pictures right here, I'll go through real quick. These are just some of the guys at Continental that I flew. I ran into a couple of Continental guys that are here today that I haven't seen in a long time. You might recognize some of these faces. I don't remember their names, but actually, That's Ralph Rena. Anybody know Ralph Rena? Oh, you do. He was a great, great instructor pilot on the 777. I took this picture in Amsterdam, and these women were wonderful, and they'd been flying for the airline forever, 40 years. And those girls were great. You ran into a lot of them that had gotten a little cynical over the years, but these four was a good bunch, I tell you. I thought this was kind of interesting because here it was, the 7-3, and then here's the 777. And that picture is where I sat for a long time. Again, fishy. This was the rollout picture of the 787 Dreamliner. We introduced it to America, and it was very exciting when ship 904 came out of the hangar. We did have battery problems with it later, which you probably know about, the battery catching on fire, exploding, little things like that. But they got that figured out, didn't they, Barry? Oh. And I got to fly that airplane for the last year of my career. It was an honor to be chosen to be in that initial cadre of instructors on that airplane. A lot of people have flown the 787 now, but we flew it first. I just can't, when I think back about that, nobody, we're just figuring things out. I signed for that airplane. I picked up a brand new 787 at Everett and signed on the dotted line, and Boeing gave me a key, which I think I have, to the jet. And I'm probably the first pilot in America to have a 787 key. But it was kind of a commemorative thing. It doesn't work. This was my class, 787 class. That's not a 787, Barry. Will you confirm that? Yeah, that was a Concorde model that was never built, but that's Pete Hernandez right there. You remember Pete? And Skip Marshall. That's me over there. We had some great instructors on that airplane. This was our first flight out of Everett. We went over to Moses Lake, one of the auxiliary fields. We had 36 takeoff and landings that day. This was the first flight, really, for all the people to get their takeoffs and landings. We had 36 takeoff and landings, a 9-hour flight. And you're looking at the man who made the first pot of coffee on America's Dreamliners right here. In fact, I made 2 pots. Speckled trout. There's my key. That's Bill Blocker. Bill and I flew a couple of proving runs to Chicago, O'Hare. And Bill Blocker, one of the most generous, kindest men I've ever been associated with. And I asked Bill to fly with me on my final flight. We did a Chicago turn because we were going fishing the next morning, and we didn't want to be coming back from the international flight and be tired. This was actually my takeoff from Los Angeles. There was a film crew or something that took a video of us out of LA. This is the bunk on the 787. I've had apartments that were smaller than that. And actually, you can't even see the whole thing. There's another, over here, there's like a chair and a reading lamp and pretty, and then of course the flight attendants had their own crew compartment in the back. They had to walk up the little stairs to get to theirs. But ours was very convenient, very, very nice. I didn't get to use it much because I was only on the airplane for a year, but this is me checking out the oxygen system in the cabin of the 787. That's Barry, you recognize that? That's instrument panel there, a 7A. Man, I have to tell you what, that airplane would pop up to 40,000 feet in about, I don't know, 12 minutes, 11 minutes, something. I mean, it was incredibly powerful. And I was the senior pilot, so I bid the best trips. And the best trips for me were, initially, were Houston to Los Angeles. And then we'd get back to Houston after midnight. It was quiet. Really pleasant way to finish my career. We started flying Denver to Tokyo nonstop, and I flew those trips, and thankfully Denver, the new airport in Denver, had a 16,000 foot runway because we used quite a bit of it. In fact, we were very heavy. We were approaching the tire limit speed on some of those takeoffs that summer. The cockpit was similar to the 777. There were some changes in technology and software and stuff like that, but I mean, my study early on in the 737 helped me all the way through my career. I was thankful that I had studied so hard early on. That's me sitting there in Houston. That was my last flight, and that's Bill, who went with me, and then I retired. And I went fishing. But then they called me back. Would you like to work in operations? And I did. And these guys are all retired pilots. It's Gary Carley. Anybody know Gary Carley? Mike Jenkins. These are wonderful men. And Clyde DiMaggio. And that was our coffee break. There I am hard at work at my desk in operations. And that was Congressman Ted Poe. Anybody recognize that guy? Huh? That man right there is Gene Kranz. And if you don't know Gene Kranz, he was one of the men primarily responsible for putting us on the moon. He built NASA's mission control almost single-handedly over the years. And I had flown Gene on the Dreamliner on his first flight. And I asked him to come up to the cockpit. I had a bunch of pictures of the cockpit printed. And when we had a special guest, I would give him that as a souvenir. So I asked him to come up, and he signed one for me, the picture. He wrote, "Failure is not an option." Fly. That was the name of his book also. And so I told Gene, I said, if you ever get a chance to come to our mission control in Houston, I'd love to give you a tour. So there he was. And we had a little placard on our desk that said, "Failure is not an option." And a great man for NASA. When I got out here to to La Quinta, I ran into Burt Rutan at the golf course. And he told me that day, I guess he had been invited to the Super Bowl or something, and he said that he had never been to a football game in his life. That was the first football game he'd ever gone to. That's one of my old high school buddies doing the photo bomb in the background. This was the kind of fishing we did in Texas, in the Laguna Madre, and for redfish in very shallow water. Fly fishing for redfish, where you can see their back, the water's this deep, so you can see their tail. And I took that, we had kayaks down there, and I took that picture of my friend John, just as the sun was coming up. And that was my life as an airline pilot, and it was, when I was in the service, I was thankful to serve my country. And then when I went to the airlines, I felt like I just changed uniforms. It was the same job. I was flying people and cargo around all over the world, and I'm I was very lucky. Very lucky. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer? Anything?
So how many hours did you wind up with?
I stopped counting at about 25,000, probably over 30, but I'm not sure. Yes, sir.
You know Sherman Smoot, Continental pilot?
Who?
Sherman Smoot.
Sherman Smoot?
No, I don't think so. Did you?
Fly to the Unlimited at Reno.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, somebody had ring on it. Yes, sir.
You still fly?
Do I still fly?
Yeah.
No.
You don't fly small plane?
No, I don't. Bert Rutan asked me that question too. I flew for 42 years. And at the end, I was giving away most of my landings for the new pilots. And I took a landing one day on the 787. I flew back to Houston. And I flew a visual approach to runway 27. And it didn't have any challenge to it. It was just, I'd done it enough. I'd done it. I didn't get butterflies. I felt like I could have done it with my eyes closed. And I thought, it's time to retire.
Wow.
So it really hasn't been, I loved it. I love the people that I flew with and everything. But I just don't have that desire to go out and fly.
Go out and fly a tail dragger. You'll get it back.
I'd probably crash. Yes, sir.
Back in your Trans-Texas days, did you ever run into a pilot by the name of Van Skiles?
Yes, sir.
Van Skiles and I flew an airplane in Arlington, Texas, with a company, with an outfit called the Confederate Air Force.
Yes, sir.
On the B-17.
Yeah. Everybody spoke very highly of Van Skiles. He was senior, and I didn't get to fly with him much. I might have flown with him once. And yeah, everybody always spoke very
It's
highly
nice
of
to
him.
know that somebody I knew was somebody you thought highly of, because I did the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever know any of the flight attendants that flew over 40 years with Continental? Mary Blinn?
Yeah.
The Tokyo route?
Yeah.
You knew Mary?
Oh, sure.
And Chuck, her husband?
I don't think I ever met Chuck.
Well, we knew the same people.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Any close calls in your career you talked about?
Oh, I remember a few. Engine failures, engine fire on takeoff one time on the DC-9. That captain reached up there and grabbed that fire handle. I thought he was going to pull it out of the instrument panel. I mean, it was, wham! You know, it was so funny. We just came back around Atlanta. I had a couple of near misses. So close. Well, you remember when Drew Lewis, the Secretary of Transportation, under Reagan had, the air traffic controllers went on strike. And so Drew Lewis, the first thing he did was reduce the capacity of the air traffic control system in the United States by 75% or something like that. And a lot of people were flying VFR. And I was in a DC-9 in the right seat, descending into Houston, coming back from Mexico City or someplace. And I think it might have been a Jetstar or something like that, was flying VFR at 17.5, probably going. They were going west, and I saw that airplane right there. And if we'd hit that airplane, we'd been the first accident directly related, or maybe the only accident directly related to that air traffic controller strike. But I mean, I could see the two pilots sitting there. I didn't even have time to say, Captain, went right over the top of them. That was probably one of the closest near misses that I ever had. But I never slid off of a runway. I never slid off of a taxiway. And I almost never parked at the wrong gate.
How about birds? How about birds?
Yes, I do have something in common with a Sullenberger, because I hit Canada geese descending at night into Vancouver in the clouds at 12,500 feet. I hit apparently a flock of Canada geese, and the bird was identified by the mechanic with the feathers that were on the airplane. And when we hit, I didn't even know they flew at night in the weather. But anyway,
Neither did he didn't think he would.
when we hit that bird, or birds, it sounded like something broke. Like something serious. It's like hitting a rock. What was that? And then on closer inspection of the airplane next day, one had hit the front of the airplane. What do they call that thing? And one of them bounced off of the engine. The sail did not go in the engine, luckily. There were some feathers underneath the airplane, but I guess we'd hit 2 or 3 of the Canada geese going into. I took several bird strikes over the years, you know. I remember hitting a seagull out of New Orleans one day. There was blood all over the. Can you see, Captain? But I was very lucky as an airline pilot. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about your exposure to Cat 3 landings?
Well, specifically, what would you like to know? I tell you, coming into London on a foggy day was unbelievable. I hope some of you have had that experience. But the airplane, of course, had auto landing, auto brakes, and the lighting system in London was so good it would take you right off the runway, take you across the field, take you right into the gate, and park. It was the greatest thing in the world to see that airplane, to do that in London. But you know, the Category 3 capability, even the Category 2 capability of an airplane is expensive to maintain. And I don't know if anybody's ever proven that it was worth the money. Because, you know, the times that I had to literally use that Category 3 capability where you have 0-0 to land, just a handful of times. So.
I was just thinking of your trust.
Oh, no question. I mean, yeah, that's not even a question. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating air disasters I've ever read was the Air France leaving Brazil to France. It hit supercooled water coming up from the Atlantic, and one storm cloaked another storm. And I don't know, have you read that?
Yes, sir.
I thought it was very, very interesting, the failure mechanisms there.
And that's why I like to fly Boeing. Because the other guy's doing something, you know what he's doing. And they didn't, because of those side stick controllers there's no field. So I think that was probably the primary cause of the accident. They didn't know what the other guy was doing.
What you're thinking of the lack of pilot proficiency with all the long haul flights and automation that comes with bigger airplanes?
Well, pilot proficiency is different now than it used to be. I took pride in knowing the auto functions of the flight director system and so on. And so when I first got on glass cockpit airplanes, I thought, I'm going to fly every third leg. I'm going to hand fly every third leg just to keep my proficiency. That lasted about 2 weeks because the safest way to fly was to have it coupled up. So I could look outside, I had better awareness of everything around me. So, yes, sir, I think there is a lack of hand flying proficiency, obviously, because the airplanes are so automated and so on, but it's just a different kind of proficiency, I suppose you'd say. Dan?
Can you comment on the plane that landed short in San Francisco?
In San Francisco?
Yeah.
Some Team Wong. I'll tell you, when Asian, that was Asian, out of Seoul, Korea, they actually offered me a job because we actually, when they started the airline, they had 737s, and we taught them, and I was teaching in the simulator at that time, and so we would get these Koreans, and the biggest problem was communication. Oh, I can't even imagine trying to learn an airplane like that and not have English as your primary language. And so a lot of times I'd get the guys that had flunked, And I met a couple of them up in Salt Lake City one day, and I went in and I said, I said, we'll meet in the cafe in the hotel. And I met them. Have you had lunch? Yes. What did you have? Snake. You had a snake? No, sandwich. And so there was one first officer that I got in Salt Lake City in the simulator, and I kept telling my boss, I'm not signing my name to a document that said he passed. There's no way this guy, his name was First Officer O, who became known as First Officer Oh No, or Oh Shit. But, so the Asiana people eventually took over their own training, but they did not have the experience that our pilots in America had. They didn't have the military background that all of my peers had coming out of the service. And in fact, I think when they got back to Korea, they probably didn't let the first officer touch the controls. A lot of captains at Asiana had quit KAL and had gone to Asiana for more money. And even the captains weren't that good that I saw. But like I say, I was flying with some of the guys that had flown too. So, I met a couple of first officers down in Long Beach, and I won't draw this story out, but they were studious and they really tried hard. But in the pre-briefing, I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. The APU low oil quantity light is going to come on right after you start the left engine. And as you know, if the APU fails, you got to put that AC, that electrical, that engine power generator on that AC bus, or you're going to lose all the AC power, and everything you've programmed in the flight management computer is going to dump. Okay, so we get in the airplane, or in the simulator, and I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Right after you start the left engine, the APU is going to fail. You're going to see that you got 15 seconds to get that AC generator on the line. And okay, here it comes, and they did it. And they both just sat there and looked at it. They didn't move a muscle. And I reached up and grabbed that generator switch to try to get it online, but I was too late. So they had to reprogram for about 20 minutes. So in the debriefing, I said, okay, we'll go over this again. This is what happened, blah, blah, blah. And that pilot looked at me and he said, that will not happen again. I'll never forget that. But they weren't, they just didn't have the skills and maybe the experience. And it surprised me it took them that long to crash an airplane, to tell you the truth. I don't know anything about that. They did find pieces of it, yeah. Yeah, they found pieces of that Malaysia crash, but it washed up on some island. I don't know a lot about it. But anyway, I think I've gone over my time. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed the talk.